Hi, I'm Nikki Lewis. Welcome back to the guest list. I am now joined by Chris Mullane. Now, Chris is also known as the Druid of Devonport. He is a celebrant and he is also a professional MC or Master of Ceremonies. So a very big welcome, Chris.
Thanks, Nikki. It's my pleasure.
Well, now first of all, we're going to get this out of the way. The Druid of Devonport. Tell us all about that.
Sounds very ominous, doesn't it?
It does a little.
Yes,
so come on, tell us.
Well, it's some people think it's a little bit like the Wizard of Christchurch, you know.
Right.
And it is, and we know each other, and we've dined together and so on. But he's far more educated than I am. But I am a Druid and believe in the old Druid philosophies and so on. But of course, although I get couples who want to have a Druid type style wedding, or parts of it, because they quite like that, there are probably the majority don't necessarily want that, and I'm very happy to accommodate whatever's required by the couple. But the Druid of Devonport, so this coming Sunday, not this Sunday but the Sunday after, 22nd, I will be doing my annual thing of leading the people of Devonport and anyone else who wants to into the tide at midday to celebrate, you know, the middle of winter.
Fantastic.
Hard to believe it's the middle of winter.
I know.
It's only just started.
So is that how you got into being a celebrant?
Yes. As a Druid, I was celebrating all the seasonal changes and other important events in people's lives. And of course, as you know, the only ceremonies that you need to be registered for are marriages and civil unions. So funerals, all of those things, baby namings, house blessings, cronings, sagings, all those sort of things, as well as the seasonal things, were very much part of my life. So I was a celebrant before I became a marriage celebrant. And people would say to me, look, you did a great job at Grandma's funeral. Could you do our daughter's wedding? You know, things like that. Or the daughter would come to me and say, can you do my wedding? I like that way you did the funeral. Now that sounds a bit ominous, doesn't it? You know, I'd like a wedding that's a bit like a funeral, but that wasn't what they meant. So eventually I got persuaded to go and get registered and become a celebrant. Yeah.
Now that's an important point. Now, to be a celebrant in New Zealand, you have to be registered.
To be a marriage or civil union celebrant. Right. And they are two separate registrations, interestingly, at the moment still. So there are some people who are purely civil union celebrants and some who are purely marriage celebrants and some who are both. And I'm registered for both. Right. And each year you have to re-register again and apply again and you know, prove that you're still meeting the criteria and so on.
Right.
Yes, and so everything else, anyone can do a funeral. Often they don't want to have a family member doing it because it's a very emotional time. And so they get an outsider, someone else, or someone who knows the family to do it. But anyone can do all of those other ceremonies, because for a funeral, for example, all the legal bits are done by the doctor who signs the death certificate, the undertaker, and so on. So, but for a marriage or civil union, you have to have a registered celebrant or go to the registry office.
Now, what is the difference between a marriage and a civil union? Because I've looked on the website and it doesn't. It's very unclear. Yep, so well, you are probably the most clued up.
Well, I get couples asking about this because. And because I do both, I have to understand the difference. Yeah. Well, it's very difficult to understand the difference. If I can just refer to my extract here from the Department of Internal Affairs Marriage, Births, Deaths and Marriages website. It says, a marriage is the formalisation of a relationship between two people, regardless of their sex, sexual orientation or gender identity, in accordance with the Marriage Act 1955. And of course that's been updated since same-sex marriage was passed into law in the Definition of Marriage Act back in 2013. But, so you got that, it's a formalisation of a relationship between two people, regardless of their sex, etc. What is a civil union? The Civil Union Act provides the criteria and rules for people to have their relationship solemnised as a civil union and officially registered in New Zealand, may be entered into by couples of the same sex or by couples of different sexes. Now, so what's the difference? So you look into the detail and what you find, there is really very little difference. One part of it that's still to be is still being looked at and updated, and people are pushing for this to happen, is that unless you're married with the same sex or not, you can't together adopt a child.
Oh, really?
You can as an individual. So one of the couple can. It's a really sort of odd thing, isn't it? That one of the couple can adopt a child, but together they can't. but they can if they're married. So the civil union, of course, came in primarily to acknowledge that people of the same gender could actually be in love, could want to plight their troth to each other for the rest of their natural life or whatever, and make it a public statement of their relationship. And in a way, that was a step towards what we now have. Yeah. And I've had couples who I've done civil unions for in the past who've come back and said, we now like to, convert that to a marriage or change that to a marriage. Some of them say upgrade, and I say it's not an upgrading, it's the same quality. It's just perhaps something special that you want to have.
Now, let's talk about terminology with regards to wedding parties, bridal parties, because I know you're a bit of a stickler for this.
Well, understandably, in most cases, the bride, or in the case of same-sex, and there are people who consider themselves the bride in the same-sex, whichever, they tend to think that it's really their day, and traditionally it is. But in fact, there's another party, isn't there? And so, to just clarify this without getting too finicky about it, there is the bridal party, which is made up of the bride and her attendants. And at various stages, some people might include her parents or family members in that at stages. But let's say the bride and her attendants. That's the bridal party. There is the groom's party, which is the groom and his attendants, possibly family as well. And then, when they come together, they are the wedding party. But inevitably, everybody starts calling it all the bridal party. And when the bridal party come into the reception, are they coming in by themselves? I just have them on a bit and say, well, what about, is he coming to the reception, Oh, he is, okay, well, let's call that the wedding party. And then they, a bit of a joke, but...
You don't want to leave him out.
No, he's important legally, probably for other purposes as well. He might be useful.
Now, when we work together, and I know when I work with some of the other celebrants, and we had Yogamani a little earlier on the show, and we always hold a rehearsal, which I know we believe is absolutely vital. Not all celebrants work the same way, but I can't stress to my clients enough how important that is. So let's talk about why it is so important.
Okay. First of all, the most important thing is that the couple, having walked through the rehearsal, so it's not doing all the words, it's actually making sure the positioning of people, the props, where they want to arrive from, those sort of things are the important things to cover. But the most important outcome, I think, is that the couple feel relaxed and go, and then tomorrow, or the day, that evening, or whenever it is they're going to do the wedding, later that week, they feel like, it's not a big fear thing because we've been through the rehearsal, everyone knows their role, the celebrant has got it all under control for us, and we're going to get exactly what we want. So they can relax and enjoy their wedding. And way back before I was a marriage celebrant, I used to be appalled at couples saying, my wedding day was such, it was so full I can't remember anything. Probably one of the most important days in your life, and you can't remember it? And that's because of the stress that gets naturally built up, and so on. And so that rehearsal is so vital for that reason, and also for the celebrant's point of view. It's a time when I can confirm that I've got it exactly the way they want it. Other people involved know where they're going to stand, how they're going to do things, and so on. So ideally, you'd have anyone who's got a particular part to play in the ceremony, as you know. But you can't always do that, people travelling from other places and so on. So at least, obviously, the bride and groom, and if possible, some of the bridal party attendants, because they're usually the ones, not always, but they're usually the ones walking down the aisle, and that's an important start to the ceremony, isn't it, It kicks off with a really good start. So that's why it's important to get them relaxed, make sure I've got it right, and then usually I sit down with the couple for 10 or 15 minutes after and just go through the final details to make sure there's no misunderstandings and that they're happy with everything we've got. And they've got all the bits and pieces. And
then you can also finalise things like if they've gone and picked up their marriage licence, that you've got that,
yes.
And make sure that's all right, and because you don't want to only get that on the day of the wedding.
No, as we have a few times. Yes.
Yeah, but it's just make sure all of those things have just been cross-dotted and it's all okay.
And that the details in the marriage licence are correct and so
Absolutely.
on. I'm authorised to make changes. If I have to, emergency changes. But it's much nicer if their lovely registration forms, if we've got time to go back and get them retyped by the Department of Internal Affairs, the Birth, Deaths and Marriages Office, it's much nicer than having me cross it out and write something and initial it,
Absolutely.
So little details, but they're important, and I think it is the little details that get finalised in that rehearsal that take the standard and the qualities of that ceremony to another level.
After the couple on their wedding day, they've signed their marriage license, and we've gone through the whole registration. What happens to that license after? I know they get a copy, but then what do you do with it after that?
Just to correct that, it's not the license, it's the registration documents,
right.
Okay? The BDM 45A and 45.
Very romantic.
Yes, sounds very romantic, doesn't it? I'm obliged by law to give, as a celebrant, to give them their copy as soon as possible after it's been signed by them and the witnesses and me.
Right.
So I tend to invite couples or encourage couples to make that a little ritual in the ceremony. Mm-hmm. The presentation of their registration paper, completed and all the lovely signatures on it and so on. And that's their copy. The second copy, which is the BDM 45, is the one that I have to get back within 10 working days to the registry office where they first applied for their marriage license. I'm obliged again by law to make sure that happens, because then it is entered into the public record, and then the couple can, after 2 weeks, apply for a copy of their marriage certificate. Now that's different from the registration papers. And in some jurisdictions overseas, they won't accept the one done on the day, even though I'd say that's better quality than the one typed up by somebody in the BDM office. But they would like to see an official government form.
Right.
And that's another area that's being made easier to do and tidying up that the new registrar's doing, yeah.
Now, let's talk about some of the kind of quirky, interesting little mini ceremonies that a couple could take or use within their ceremony. So things like sand ceremonies and unity candle,
yeah, things like
that kind of thing. Yeah.
I suggest to couples that one way of making their ceremony unique to them is to choose various things. Could be things from their own ancestry. I've done Greek weddings where they have a crown, and they are the king and queen now of their own household, and so those are placed on their heads and they're swapped over, so they're equal in charge of their own household. So it's a lovely, meaningful thing. So I offer various ideas to couples that I've perhaps researched or borrowed from many different cultures. And someone will say, that's really us, you know. So it could be the candle, and it could be sand. They're very commonly used because the symbolism is that here are two people that have been brought up in their own families and in their own journey until they met and fell in love. And then either the candle is lit from the two family candles to symbolise the unification or the unity and the joining of the two families as well. And similarly with the sand blending and so on. And you can bring sand from anywhere in the world, and it's very simple to find out how to do it without any problems coming through. You just declare it. As long as it's dry and clean, no problem. No, sure. And I've had sand come from many different countries, yeah, and it's lovely.
Fantastic.
So there's lots of others, but I don't have time to tell you one.
Now, once the ceremony ends, that's pretty much the end of the duties of the celebrant, and then they would hand over to the MC, the Master of Ceremonies. And then the Master of Ceremonies, they should be taking over and controlling the rest of the events leading into the reception and then looking after the reception. So what does a Master of Ceremonies do?
Well, it depends. There's kind of two parts to it, and people get them mixed up a bit like wedding parties and bridal parties and so on. There is the job of Toastmaster, the role of Toastmaster. Now, a Toastmaster might simply introduce the speakers in the sequence that the bride and groom have asked them to. And it may be a brief introduction, you know, our next speaker is blah, 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 and so on. And they would make sure that sequence follows, and if perhaps if there's a number of speeches, they may be done, you know, between courses during the meal or whenever that's going to happen. So the timing of when they happen, who's introduced, and they might coordinate with each speaker as to if they're going to finish with a toast, what that toast is going to be. Because it's a nice way to signal that you're finished. Propose a toast. Yeah. It's nice and clean. And then thanking the speakers and so on. That might, you know, they've got to carefully coordinate that so they don't steal the thunder of the next speaker. True. So that's a Toastmaster's role. But the MC's role, the Master of Ceremonies or the Mistress of Ceremonies, or sometimes it's a double act, you know, is much bigger than that. It might incorporate Toastmaster duties, but it will also incorporate really running the event in terms of coordinating with the kitchen, coordinating with people like yourself, the wedding planners and so on, about various things, so that the event is a seamless whole and flows. Now, of course, it always looks that way, but seldom does it go according to plan. So that's a very important role, is being right on the ball. Now, why would you want a professional master of ceremonies instead of maybe a family member or a friend? It obviously, it's to do with relationship, and that's an important part of the decision. But another important part is your friends and family members want to relax and enjoy the celebrations and so on, and therefore if you have a professional doing it, that person is going to be right focused on the job right throughout. And also they can bring ideas for how you can make your reception special for you and unique as well, instead of just sort of the standard stuff that might be trotted out. So an important thing is, at the end of the ceremony, how is that transition made? Because otherwise what happens quite often is the ceremony's over and everyone's looking at their watch going, well, I wonder when the party starts.
Absolutely. Okay?
So you need a smooth transition, and there's things often like photographs, maybe with the whole group, maybe with, you know, smaller family groups or groups of friends and so on. The couple may be going away somewhere to take their photos themselves, either on site or off site, as you know. And so there's some timing coordinations there. And often things don't go quite according to the time plan, you know, the run sheet. So you've got to find out what style the couple want as an MC. Do they want you to really be the MC and the continuity person, or do they just want a Toastmaster, or do they want, you know, it's not about the MC, it's just like it's not about the celebrant. No. But the MC provides a very critical flow to the evening, and ensures that everyone's enjoying themselves, is available to the couple at a moment's notice, you know, to repair something that's gone wrong, or to anticipate something or to change something.
Chris, thank you so much. You've given us so many ideas, not only from your celebrant's perspective, but also from an MC, Master of Ceremonies perspective. Now, if somebody is looking for a celebrant or an MC, or both, even better, how do they get in touch with you?
Well, of course they could contact you, couldn't they?
Absolutely, because I'd recommend you in a heartbeat.
That's good. I do recall you saying that if you get married again, you'll be asking me to do the ceremony.
You would definitely.
I've written that down, you know.
Yes, you would definitely do my celebrant.
So the other thing is, probably the best place to go is simply Google Wedding Wise, all one word, and under celebrants there, and I'll pop up as one of the celebrants, Chris Mullane, celebrant and MC.
And I know you've got fantastic reviews on there, so you have.
That's
so
lovely.
Thank you so much.
The guest list is made possible with support from wedding champions who make your magic day possible. People like Edgewater Resort in Rarotonga, the perfect spot for all your family and friends to celebrate. And what a place to have that honeymoon. Thinking weddings and honeymoon, think Edgewater Resort, Rarotonga. And speaking of dream holidays or a wedding overseas, talk to travel managers. Right throughout New Zealand, they can process all your travel needs. That idyllic honeymoon is just moments away. Call one of their specialists, Anita Gatley Travel. Specialising in everything wedding, give Anita a call on 09 845 2150. 09 845 2150.
So I've been